Welcome to Reader Radar. We dive deep into today's best-selling books, offering thoughtful, in-depth reviews to help you decide if each title is worth your time. Whether you're searching for your next great read or just want a sneak peek at what's trending, Reader Radar has you covered. Tune in and let's explore the books making waves across every genre.
Hey Reader Radar fans, welcome back. So many of you have told us how much you struggle with making habits stick, and well, that's exactly what we're diving into today.
You got it. We're tackling Atomic Habits by James Clear, and we're going even further, folks. We're talking about that often overlooked gem, the workbook.
It's true, you know? The book itself gets all the attention, but the workbook is where the real magic happens. If you've ever tried and failed to make lasting changes, well, let me tell you, this is for you.
It really is like having a coach in your corner, right there on the pages, showing you step by step how to take what Clear teaches and actually apply it.
Exactly. So we're excited to really dig in today, especially for all of you Reader Radar listeners who are all about action. But first, let's talk about James Clear himself. He wasn't always this productivity superstar. In fact, he had a major setback in high school.
Oh yeah, a serious baseball injury, right? I mean, we're talking facial fractures, a long recovery. It could have derailed his whole athletic career.
Absolutely. It's incredible how he turned that adversity into, well, fuel. College became his testing ground. He started experimenting with these tiny habits, like getting enough sleep, keeping his room tidy, consistent studying.
And guess what? It's like those little changes set off this chain reaction. Academic awards, top athletic performance, it all started falling into place.
It's a testament to that whole idea of compounding, right?
Yeah.
Even small improvements can lead to big results over time.
100%. Atomic Habits is all about building those systems for sustainable growth, not just those quick fixes.
And that's where the book and the workbook work so well together. They give you that research-based framework, but the workbook is where you really get the personal, turning those abstract concepts into real steps you can take.
Right. It takes those ideas out of the clouds and brings them down to earth.
Speaking of frameworks, I think we got to break down those famous 4 laws of behavior change, right? Let's start with make it obvious. This one really resonated with me.
It's so powerful. It's all about recognizing how our environment shapes our behavior. You know, Clear talks about a study where they rearranged the drinks in a hospital cafeteria.
What did they do?
Well, they made water more visible, more prominent, and guess what? Water consumption skyrocketed just by changing what people saw first.
Seriously, just like that. Wow, that really shows how much those little cues matter. So how can we actually use this in our own lives?
Well, one way is through something Clear calls implementation. And it's basically like saying, have a plan, but in a more strategic way.
Okay, so instead of saying like, I'll exercise more, which is kind of vague.
Exactly. You get super specific. After I close my laptop for work, I'll do 10 push-ups. You're defining when and where the habit will happen, taking out all that guessing.
So you're setting yourself up for success by like removing the decision-making in the moment.
Exactly. And then there's this other cool technique he talks about, habit stacking. You piggyback a new habit onto one you already do.
Give me an example. I'm a big fan of examples.
Sure. Think about it like this. After I pour my morning coffee, I'll write one sentence in my journal. You're basically using that existing routine as a trigger for the new behavior.
Like that. I can totally see how that would make it easier to stick with the new habit. And I think this is where that workbook really shines. It's got templates for habit stacking, designing your environment to make it work for you, all those practical steps.
It really is that bridge, you know, between the what to do and the actually. So Reader Radar, folks, think about those habits you've been wanting to build. How could you make them more obvious in your routine? What habits could you stack them onto?
I love how the workbook really helps you answer those questions. It makes everything so much more personal. Okay, we've tackled the first law, make it obvious. Now I'm ready to dive into the psychology of desire. What's up with law number 2?
That's make it attractive, and trust me, this one gets really interesting.
Bring it on. I'm fascinated by all the ways our brains work, especially when it comes to those tempting habits that aren't so good for us. Like, why can't I resist that bag of chips?
You're not alone. Think about the food industry for a second. They've become masters of making things irresistible, right? Chips, cookies, fast food, it's all engineered to trigger those cravings. They're playing on our primal instincts for salt, sugar, and fat.
I mean, those were valuable calories way back when, right? For our ancestors. But these days, those cravings can lead us down a dangerous path.
Exactly. And then there's dopamine, that feel-good chemical in our brains.
Oh yeah, dopamine. Everyone's always talking about dopamine.
Well, for good reason. And what's fascinating is that it's not just released when we experience pleasure, but when we anticipate it.
Whoa. So even just thinking about that delicious pizza can give us a dopamine hit.
You got it. And that's part of why things like gambling can be so addictive. It's the anticipation of the win, the possibility of a reward that keeps people coming back for more.
Okay, so how do we use this to our advantage? How can we make healthy habits feel just as rewarding, just as tempting as those not so healthy ones?
Clear suggests a mental trick, reframing how we think about them. Instead of I have to go to the gym, it becomes I get to move my body and feel energized.
I like that. It's like flipping the script. It's not a chore, it's a gift.
And guess what? The workbook has these exercises to help you do just that, to identify those have-tos and turn them into get-to.
I am loving this workbook more and more. It's all about using the power of positive anticipation. Okay, we've covered 2 laws, 2 more to go, and honestly, my head is already spinning with ideas. What about those times when motivation alone just isn't enough?
That's where the next 2 laws come in. And you're in for a treat, my friend. The Atomic Habits Workbook gets even more practical, even more hands-on. Reader Radar listeners, you won't want to miss this. All right, ready for law number 3?
Hit me with it.
It's called Make It Easy, and it's all about reducing that friction. You know, those little obstacles that get in the way.
Oh, I like the sound of that. I'm all about finding those effortless wins. Tell me more.
Okay, so think about it this way. As humans, we naturally gravitate towards what's easy, right? If there's a shortcut, we're going to take it.
It's true. We like to conserve energy.
Exactly. Clear calls it the law of least effort. It's like built into our DNA.
So how do we use that to our advantage when it comes to building good habits?
It's all about making the things we want to do as frictionless as possible. Clear gives this example from Japanese manufacturing back in the 70s.
Okay, Japanese manufacturing. This should be good.
They were obsessed with something called lean production. Basically, it was all about eliminating wasted movement, any unnecessary steps in their processes.
So like super efficiency.
Yes. They're optimizing everything, and you can apply that same thinking to your own life, like prepping your workout clothes the night before, or having healthy snacks ready to go.
Ah, I see. So you're removing those little barriers that might make you say, ugh, it's too much effort.
Precisely. And then there's Clear's 2-minute rule. This one is a game changer, especially for those of us who tend to get overwhelmed by big, ambitious.
I feel personally attacked.
Haha, we've all been there. But the 2-minute rule is all about starting small. Like ridiculously small. You take those big daunting tasks and you break them down into these tiny actions that you can do in, well, 2 minutes or less.
Okay, give me an example.
So instead of write a novel, it's write 1 sentence. Instead of run a marathon, it's tie my running shoes.
Wow, it almost feels too simple.
But that's the brilliance of it. You're lowering the bar so much that it's almost impossible not to start. And once you've started, well, you're way more likely to keep going.
I love that. Reader Radar listeners, you know how much we're all about taking action, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is where the Atomic Habits Workbook really shines.
Oh yeah. Big time. It's packed with exercises to help you pinpoint those friction points in your current habits.
So you can find creative ways to make those good choices, those desired actions, easier.
You got it. It's all about making it so easy you can't say no.
I'm noticing a pattern here. Each of these laws has a corresponding section in the workbook, right? A place where you can go deeper, personalize it, really make it your own.
That's the beauty of it. The book gives you the big picture knowledge, the strategies, but the workbook is your action.
Love it. Okay, we've explored 3 laws. Hit me with that final piece of the habit puzzle.
All right, law number 4, make it satisfying. This one's all about those rewards, especially those immediate ones. You gotta make those good habits feel good.
Ah, instant gratification. Now you're speaking my language. But how do you make something like eating healthy or exercising feel immediately rewarding? Those benefits usually come later, right?
Right, and that's the challenge. One powerful strategy Clear talks about is tracking your progress, like visually seeing those check marks on a habit tracker or logging your workouts in a journal.
So those don't break the chain calendars, right?
Yeah.
You get that visual reminder of your consistency.
Exactly. And guess what? The workbook has some awesome templates for habit tracking.
I am telling you, this workbook is like a treasure chest of habit building tools. It's the perfect complement to Clear's insights. But we've got to talk about the flip side. What about those bad habits we're trying to break? How do we make those less satisfying?
Ah, excellent question. Clear talks about adding a bit of a consequence to those undesirable behaviors. He calls it a habit contract.
So it's like creating a system of accountability. Not punishment exactly, but...
Right, more like a nudge in the right direction. He uses the example of early seatbelt law.
Oh, interesting. What about them?
Well, making it punishable by law to not wear a seatbelt made the negative consequence more immediate, more tangible.
I see. It wasn't about shaming people. It was about putting a structure in place to encourage the desired behavior.
Exactly. So how can we apply this to our own life? Let's say you want to curb those mindless social media scrolls. You could make a pact with a friend, right? Like if you catch each other doing it, you each donate to a cause you don't support.
That's brilliant. It adds that element of accountability, and it makes the consequence of indulging in the bad habit more immediate. Love it. Okay, so we've got those 4 laws down. Super insightful. But Clear goes deeper, right? He digs into some other nuances of habit formation.
He does, and one of the things he tackles is this common misconception, something I think our action-oriented Reader Radar audience will appreciate.
Oh, tell me.
It's this idea that you have to do a habit for a certain number of days, like 21 days, for it to stick. But Clear says it's not about the duration, it's about the repetition.
So it's not a magic number of days.
Nope, it's the consistent practice that really matters. It's about those repetitions wiring those new neural pathways in your brain.
Makes sense. It's like learning a musical instrument. You don't get good by thinking about it for a month. You get good by actually playing it over and over again.
Exactly. And speaking of action, Clear makes this really interesting distinction between motion and action.
Ooh, I'm intrigued. Lay it on me.
Okay, so it's easy to get caught up in motion, right? All the planning, the researching, the gathering of information. But it's the action, the actually doing the thing, that gets results.
So it's like motion is buying all the ingredients, but action is actually cooking the meal.
perfect analogy. And that's something we see a lot with self-improvement, right? People get stuck in the reading, the learning, but they never actually take action on what they've learned.
And that's where that workbook comes in, right? It pushes you to take those concepts and translate them into concrete steps.
Yes, it's your accountability partner, making sure you actually walk the walk. And, Clear also emphasizes the importance of reflection and review, regularly checking in with yourself, seeing what's working, tweaking your approach as needed. He talks about the LA Lakers basketball team in the 80s. They had this program.
Lakers. I'm listening. Big basketball fan.
Well, they started tracking all these detailed statistics on their performance, not just wins and losses, but very specific actions during the game.
So getting really granular with the data, understanding those micro behaviors that were contributing to their success.
Exactly. And they would use this data to compare their performance over time, see where they were falling short, and adjust their strategies accordingly.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that saying, what gets measured gets managed. You got to have a system for tracking, analyzing, and refining your approach.
And guess what? The workbook provides tools for all of that. It's got sections for tracking your habits, reflecting on your progress, making those course corrections along the way.
It's like having your own personal feedback loop for self-improvement. Okay, so we've got the 4 laws down, we're focusing on repetitions, taking action, reflecting on our progress. Anything else we need to keep in mind on this habit-building journey?
Yes. Clear also delves into how our individual personalities and talents can play a role in our success with habit formation. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Makes sense. We all have different strengths, different things we're naturally drawn to. So how do we factor that in?
Clear talks about aligning your ambitions with your natural abilities and interests. He even uses this phrase, finding a game where the odds are in your favor.
So if you're naturally athletic, maybe you gravitate towards fitness goals.
Exactly. But what if your strengths aren't so obvious? Well, Clear says you can actually create your own game by combining your unique skills and interests in a way that makes stand out. He gives the example of Scott Adams, the guy who created the Dilbert comic strip.
Oh, Gilbert. Love those comics. What's his story?
Well, Adams was a decent artist, a funny guy, but not necessarily the best in their category. But he combined those skills with his business background and created something totally unique and wildly.
So it's about finding that sweet spot, that intersection of your talents and passions, and using that to create your own path.
You got it. And finally, even when you find that sweet spot, it's important to make sure you don't get bored or complacent, right? We got to keep things fresh.
Oh yeah, that dreaded plateau. How do you avoid that? How do you keep those habits exciting, even as you become more proficient?
Clear suggests finding ways to keep those habits novel, enjoyable, even as you master them. It's about finding that sweet spot between challenge and skill where you're constantly growing and engaged.
Ah, that flow state. I love that. Reader Radar fans, this has been an amazing deep dive. We've covered so much ground. From those 4 laws of behavior change to the importance of repetitions and finding that sweet spot between challenge and skill, it's been incredible. But what I'm really taking away from all this is the power of using Atomic Habits A&D, that workbook, together.
I'm so glad you said that. They really are the dynamic duo of habit formation. The book gives you the knowledge, the science-backed strategies, but that workbook, that's where you turn those concepts into a personalized plan. It's like having Clear as your own personal habit coach.
Especially for our Reader Radar listeners who love those actionable steps, that workbook seems like a must-have. You're not just passively reading, you're actually engaging with the material, putting it into practice.
Exactly. It takes you beyond just getting the ideas and helps you actually apply them to your own goals and challenge. It's like having a whole toolkit designed to help you build those good habits, break the bad ones, and become, well, the best version of yourself.
And for anyone who struggled with making habits stick in the past, that workbook offers that extra support, that guidance, right?
Yeah.
It's like a roadmap for those moments when motivation dips or you hit a plateau.
Totally. It's like having a secret weapon in your back pocket, helping you anticipate those challenges and come up with strategies to overcome them.
This deep dive has been eye-opening for me, and I have a feeling it's going to be a game changer for our listeners too.
I hope so. Before we wrap up, I want to leave everyone with one final thought. Imagine yourself a year from now. What if those tiny changes you start making today, those little habits you build, could compound into something incredible, a whole new you?
That's such a powerful image. It's not about those overnight transformations, right?
Right.
It's about the steady effort, those small improvements adding up to create real change over time.
That's what it's all about, embracing the process, trusting in those small steps, and enjoying that journey of growth.
This has been a fantastic exploration of Atomic Habits and that often overlooked but super valuable workbook. Reader Radar fans, we highly recommend checking out both.
Remember, lasting change starts with those small, consistent action. Don't wait for the perfect moment. Start small, start today. You got this.
And that's it for this deep dive. We'll catch you next time on the deep dive when we'll be exploring another fascinating topic. Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep building those atomic habits.
See you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to Reader Radar. We appreciate you spending time with us and hope our review helps you decide if this book is the right fit for you. Remember, if you're interested, you can find the book through the affiliate link below. It's a great way to support the podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to keep the reviews coming. And if you have any suggestions for books you'd like us to cover, please leave a comment. Happy reading, and we'll catch you in the next episode.